So some water problems in the United States. We've got here the Southwest consumes more than it renews. The Colorado River, since we have so much diverting water and using for agriculture in the United States, when it gets down to Mexico, there's very little fresh water. Mexico is facing one of the most serious water shortages of all in the Western Hemisphere out of all countries. Mono Lake, which is another one, diverting water. We don't have the replenishing water of the lake, so the lake is actually, the water is actually decreasing in the lake. And we also have an increase in salinity because of the water evaporation. And then the Ogallala Aquifer, this funny word, Ogallala. I've got a video that you should be watching on the Ogallala River Aquifer, and this is the largest aquifer in the United States that's actually right in the middle of the country. So looking closer at the Colorado River, Colorado River is the reason that the Grand Canyon is the way that it is, because over time this river flowing through carved a path through this, and you can see the river at one time was much larger and wider, and you can see here, because of that diverting water for agriculture or blocking it because of a dam for hydroelectricity, you get an increase of evaporation where your reservoirs are, and also diverting water where you can see this lighter area on the rock where the water used to be. So you can see that this water is decreasing. And then by the time that it gets down to Mexico, there's very little water for Mexico. This diagram here looks at the average precipitation across the United States. You can see that here on the east we have a lot of precipitation, so we're in good standings. But if you look here on the west, very little precipitation, except for up top. There's extremely high precipitation in northwest United States, but very little here in the southwest. So looking at the Colorado River Basin, it is 1,400 miles long and has been altered by 14 major dams and reservoirs to the point where water rarely reaches the Gulf of California now. This endangers many species that spawn in the river systems and has led to an increased salt contamination of aquifers near the coast. So you can see here we got California, Utah, this is the upper basin, and then the lower basin. And a basin is just basically where water accumulates or comes from. Since you have the Rocky Mountains as the water rains onto the Rocky Mountains and then flows down with the streams. Another water problem is the Ogallala Aquifer, which you have here in the middle of the country. One of the largest groundwater deposits in the world. Also, what takes place here in this part of the world, or this part of the country? Or what biome is in this part of the country? Yeah, you have a lot of grasslands in this area, and grasslands are good for what? Yeah, agriculture. So a lot of agriculture takes place here, and agriculture is one of the main consumers of water. And increasing demands on food supplies across the world, we've had an increased demand on agriculture, which also has an increased demand on water. So that increased demand on this water has decreased the Ogallala Aquifer and the size of it, to where some farmers have actually run out of water supplies, where they would have to drill their wells deeper and deeper to try to hit the water table or hit the aquifer. So if you look at across the world, water supplies and stress on the world water supply, if you look at red to orange areas, those have high stress on water, and then the blue areas are none. You can see where in the world has the highest stress of water, or highest stress of water supply. You can see here in the Sahara Desert, also in the Middle East, a lot of desert regions have high water demands, which would cause a stress on water supplies. But then you also have areas that have none, and you can see here a lot of the tropical rainforests tropical rainforests tend to not have as much. Or in the upper parts as well, because you have a lot of snow and ice in these areas, so there's plenty of water supply, but you don't have that much of a demand for agriculture in these areas. Water problems around the world. Drinking water is a huge problem. The World Health Organization states that 1.4 billion people are without safe water, drinking water, and about 2.9 without access to satisfactory means of waste disposal. So if you can't deposit your waste properly, it ends up getting back in that water supply, so taking away from that safe drinking water. Population growth. China, India, Mexico, Sahara parts of Africa increases the demand for this water, this limited resource. The Rhine River Basin, which is in Switzerland, Netherlands, runs through Luxembourg, Germany, and France. A lot of industry in these areas, and since that runs through so many different countries, it is hard to regulate how the water is treated. So some of these countries that are more higher up on upstream will not be too concerned with what they do with the water and then putting it back in as it flows downstream and gets to another country. That country has to deal with the waste or decreased water quality from the other country that is upstream from them. The aerial sea, too, as well, similar to Mono Lake, is reducing in size. It is reduced 90% in size over the last 50 years, and there's a really cool video that shows the reduction of the aerial sea. The greatest water supply in the world is found in Asia and South America. So taking a closer look at the aerial sea, all right, you can look, aerial sea is found here on the border of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, shown right here. Aerial sea, what it looked like in 1989. Here we go in 2008. You can see how much water has been reduced from this area because of water diversion from the streams and rivers flowing into it. Here we go with the aerial sea in 1977, 1989, and then 2006. Here's a good example you can find in these regions where rivers used to flow, these fishing boats that have just been abandoned in these areas because the water is just no longer there.